Arriving to the mission was crazy, I think. So it's like most missions, you go on an airplane all night and all day, and then you get, so we flew from Los Angeles to Santiago, and then we took another plane to Antofagasta. And just that moment when you finally descend below the clouds and you see the desert and you realize that you will not see rain for 18 months or 2 years, and you'll probably not see grass or trees, and you just see it and it looks like Mars, and that's a shocking feeling. And then you come down into this airport and there's no trees, and it's awesome. You see all the assistants and the office elders, and they're so excited to get you, and you're dead tired, and you go to the mission office and you get your trainer there. And for me, it was really overwhelming because I got my trainer, which was so fun, and then they put us on a bus and we went another 7 hours overnight. And so for me, it was about 3 days without sleeping, but I think now they let you stay in a hotel overnight, so that's really nice. But it's just so fun to be in the mission that first day, and I would just say just soak it up, because it's fun to not understand anything. Oh man, that you do not understand anything when you get there. I had an American companion, so that was nice, but it's just fun to get to know everybody and how excited everyone is, and then you get to your apartment and you just realize that this is your life for the next 18 months or 2 years, and you have no idea what you're gonna do, and you get to work and you start working right away, and you're dead tired, but luckily there's a lot of energy that comes from not knowing what's gonna happen. The Chile Antofagasta mission, I feel like is unique because the mission is really long. Chile is just real long in general, and it's about the top third of the country. And so from the top city, Arica, to Vallenar, it's about 22 to 24 hours on a bus. And let me tell you, there is not a single change in scenery in those 22 hours. My longest bus ride I ever took was 18 hours, so that's pretty normal. Almost every missionary has that. But I think it's unique in the fact that most cities in the United States, it's, there's one city and that just like merges into the next city, and that merges into the next city, but the mission is not like that. You have a city, and you can stand on top of a mountain and look at the city and just see the exact moment where the city ends. And then after that, it's just pure desert for hours and hours. And just between the two cities, there's nothing. There's no trees, there's no houses, nobody lives there. And so it's just really interesting that way, because the cities are really spread apart and there's just nothing in between them. And so that's the geography, I guess, of the mission. It's a desert, so it's hot. It gets cold because it's on the coast, but it's hot most of the time. There's two types of cities. So there's the cities on the coast, and then there's inland cities, and that's like Calama and Copiapó. And those two cities get really cold at night and really hot during the day. And so your skin gets really dry, and your hair starts to break and to fall apart. And I've heard stories about people being in the inland cities during the winter, and their lips crack and everything because it's just so dry. The whole mission is dry. It never rains. I felt rain once, but most missionaries don't feel rain. So it's real fun. Most of the cities are on the coast, and so you've got the coast, and then you've got the Andes Mountains. So a lot of the areas are, you're just walking straight uphill all day. So you might lose weight. You would if it weren't for the bread. So the nearest temple is pretty far away. It's really hard for Chileans to be able to go more than once every couple years, if that. And that's if they put a really big priority on it. The nearest one for most of them would be Santiago, and that's probably a 2-day journey. In the north of the mission, they have Cochabamba in Bolivia that's close. So a lot of them will go there. It's about 12 hours, but it's a huge altitude change, so they all get sick. They all promise themselves they'll never go to Cochabamba again, and then they go the next year. But we're lucky in the fact that there's going to be a new temple at some point in Peru, and that'll be closer for a lot of the members. The church, as far as the church goes, it's struggling in the northern part of Chile, just mostly because of the mining culture. But something that was really interesting for me when I went there is almost every single ward has their own building. So that's kind of cool because it's usually in the middle of your area, and so it's really easy to take investigators to church. But it's hard for the members to clean it every week. But there's probably about, I used to know this, there's probably about 8 stakes in the mission, maybe a few more or less, and there's 2 or 3 districts, and so it's growing. It's growing slowly but surely, and those are big goals of the mission right now, is to double the attendance and double the temple recommends, and to get the members of northern Chile just really focused on the temple. My favorite Chilean tradition, and it's not Chilean, it's really all of Latin America, maybe the whole world besides the United States, but I love the kiss. It's the typical greeting in Chile. Elders aren't allowed to do it, which is a major bummer, I think. But sisters, we do it all the time, and it's basically, you don't even really kiss their cheek, but you just go in and your cheek touches their cheek, and it is the perfect greeting. I love it because you'll come back and you'll think that the handshake is just so formal and cold, but the kiss is nice because you don't have to hug every single person, but you're like in close contact. It's really easy to just it's like shaking hands at church. You just go and you kiss everybody, and it's real fun. But sometimes the men try to kiss you, and sometimes they're drunk. And the members usually know. The member men always know not to kiss you, but sometimes it's an awkward situation if you meet a new investigator or a less active's husband, and he comes in for the kiss, and my rule was to just let it happen. It's not a real kiss, it's just a greeting, and sometimes it creates a really awkward situation if you're like, whoa, we cannot kiss. And then just tell them afterwards, but it is just the best, and it is hard not to do it anymore because it's such a nice way to greet someone, and it's a really big part of their culture. By far the best holiday on the mission is the 18th of September. And nothing else even comes close. Christmas doesn't come close. Thanksgiving doesn't even exist. But the 18th of September is so fun. Chileans don't have a lot of national pride, I would say. It's not like Argentina or other places where, no matter how bad the country is, they're still, from that country. Chileans, they're just really chill people, except for 1 week of the year, and that's the week around the 18th, and that week they go crazy, and there's flags everywhere, and there's just barbecues in every house, and it's hard to work that day, really, honestly, because every place you'll go to, every member house will have a barbecue. Every non-member house might be a little tipsy, or the day after, most people are sleeping until really late during the day because of the night before. But it's just a really fun cultural event. Just a lot of national pride, a lot of special foods, and it is really fun. I would say just try to enjoy those days, and try to bring the Spirit everywhere you go, but don't worry too much about numbers during those days, I would say, because it's really hard it's really easy to get into a house. It's really hard to start a lesson, and but it is a blast. That week is a blast. So Chilean Spanish is crazy and it's fun, but it takes a really long time. I probably didn't understand anything my first about 3 months, I would say, but I was a lot slower than most. It just was hard for me to understand. But even the Latins that come to the mission just have a really hard time at first understanding what's going on. Chileans are really proud of their language, and they know it's really bad. I mean, you'll hear all the time. You'll say something in Chilean, and they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, we have the worst Spanish," and they're just so proud of it. It's cute. And an experience I had with it was that when I first got to the mission, somebody told me, they said, make sure that you learn proper Spanish and don't learn Chilean Spanish. And I remember just thinking about it that night, and this was a personal decision, but I realized that I wasn't there to learn Spanish. I was there to be Chilean, and I was there to learn their language, because that was the important thing, was that I could communicate with them, and I was called to serve the Chileans. And I decided to learn Chilean Spanish, and it was so fun. Did I learn it perfectly? And should you always speak in really Chilean Spanish? No. But when I would speak in their accent and just say their idioms, I can't remember how to say that word in English, but when you do that, they just feel so special. Like, it's such a great way to reach out to them, to speak in their own language and speak in their own tongue. But their pronunciation is just terrible, and they don't say their S's, and they don't really say their D's a lot of the time, and so it ends up and they have this weird sing-songy way of talking where they just say, like, haga lo que tú queráis, and other Latins just have no idea what that means, and it's fun, but it is really hard to understand. Advice I would give about learning the language would definitely be to read the Book of Mormon in Spanish, and do it as soon as you can. When I very first got to the mission president had the whole mission read the Book of Mormon in the other language, and we had to do it in a month. And that was really hard for me because I only had about a month or two in the mission, but it increased my ability to speak Spanish so much. And there's just so many words that are so fun that other countries, I would have Argentine companions or Peruvian companions, and it would just be so hard for them to learn the new words, but when they did, it really helped us to teach the Chileans. In northern Chile, the main occupation is mining. And there's a lot of mines up in the north part of Chile. And you'll actually get people from southern Chile going up to the mines. And they work, the Chilean men, it's mostly men who work in the mines, but they'll work 7 by 7 or 10 by 10. So they're in the house for 7 days, and then they leave for 7 days. And that makes teaching really hard sometimes, because, especially for the elders, since the husband's only there 1 week, and then the next week they're not there. And it's just a cultural thing that you just get used to. It's hard sometimes because you'll be in these little wards, and the bishop's only there every other week. Or they have 4 by 4, which means that the bishop's not there for an entire month, and then they are there for the next month. And it's really hard. It's hard on the priesthood up there in Chile, in the northern part especially, and it's hard to teach them, and sometimes they have crazy schedules where they work only at nights, and so they're really tired during the day and they can't go to church, and it's just one thing that you get used to. A lot of times in the mines, they're not exactly the most virtuous, lovely places in the world too. And so it's really hard. I had one investigator that worked in the mine a lot. They make really good money in the mines, which is why a lot of people do them. But it was really hard for him to quit smoking. And it was because when he was down in my area, we could help him, and he had all this moral support. But when he went up to the mines, everybody else was smoking, and he was underground, and the temptations were just so much there, and we couldn't even call him for the whole 7 days because he was out of signal, and it was a really big challenge. But it's their way. So the northern part of Chile, all of Chile really, it's in the Ring of Fire, and so there's a lot of earthquakes. It's funny because we call earthquakes anything where the earth quakes, but in Chile they have, or in Spanish, they have a differentiation. And so below 7.0 is called a temblor, which is just like a tremor. And above a 7 is called an earthquake, or terremoto. And so you'll feel tremors a lot. Some missionaries have like superpowers to feel them all the time, and they'll feel probably one a week or, a couple a month. But in April of this year, we started to feel really big tremors, and I thought they were a blast. Latins are really, really afraid of earthquakes, turns out. And so I remember just sitting on a bed, and there was like a 6.7, so it wasn't even an earthquake yet, and we just felt the earth kind of go like this, and I was in a room with a bunch of kids. We were sitting on a bed. You teach a lot of lessons on beds, turns out, and I was sitting on there, and the kids started freaking out, and I just rose my hands up in the air and look, no hands, and tried to get everyone to calm down. But about a week later, there was an 8.3, I think, earthquake, and that was a little more scary. It was like being in a movie, honestly, because you just started seeing everything shake on the walls, and you just started seeing the walls and the ceiling shake, and I had never really experienced that before, and I tried to calm people down by kind of joking around with them a tiny bit, but then the lights started, flickering and turning off, and everybody was screaming. I was in this house for refugees, teaching a lesson, and they just started running out with their hands in the air, praying to Jesus, and they were screaming and crying, and I wasn't scared, but when the lights started flickering, and it was still just shaking so much, we went outside, and that was real weird, because you could just see all the light posts just shaking, and you could just see the earth shaking, and it lasted probably about 2 minutes, so it was really long, and just being around so many people crying, and then we just saw the elders. We shared a ward with the elders at the time, and they just ran around the corner looking for us, and we just headed to the mountains. And everybody, all of Chile, or all of the northern part of Chile, just started heading towards the mountains, and because there's a big fear of a tsunami. And so we just sat out there by the mountains for a couple hours, and then we ended up sleeping, all of us, in a church building that night. And after that, there were a lot of other there was other earthquakes and other tremors, and I really enjoyed the experience, honestly, but most of the Chileans were a little freaked out, but that's just something you come to expect. The nice thing is Chile is a rock. The northern part of Chile is just, it's a rock with a lot of houses on them, and so even though a lot of the houses aren't made very well, there wasn't really very much damage. I mean, if you think about the United States, a 6 or a 7 just can flatten a city, but in Chile, they get 8s and they're totally fine. So there's not too much damage. It's not something to worry about. It's fun. So Chilean food is really bland. Well, I guess by my expectations, I thought it would be like Mexico with lots of spices, and it's really not. You'll eat a lot of rice, and they put mayonnaise and lemon on everything. So I hope that you like mayonnaise. They eat a lot of bread, which is delicious. It's just like this this homemade bread. It's really interesting because the homemade bread is super cheap, but like the sliced bread that you would get here is really expensive. So people you just go to the local little tiny store that's every couple blocks in people's houses really, and you just buy bread, and it's delicious. During the winter, there's something called once, and it's basically tea time after dinner. And so you eat so much bread, and I would say the winter is when you have a real chance of gaining a lot of weight, because the bread is so good, and they'll put avocado on it or cheese on it. The cheese is really good, and you just eat so much of it. One piece of advice I would give about once is that there's a lot of different types of tea, and you'll be drinking a lot of it. But if you find one that you like, I always kept a couple packets of it in my backpack, because if you have an investigator and they don't have herbal tea and they only have black tea, then you get in an awkward situation. Or sometimes they'll only have like these weird teas that you think are really nasty. And so I just always kept the type that I liked in my backpack with me. Something that surprised me was, even though everything's on the coast, I ate almost no fish, no seafood really the whole time, and you'll eat just so much rice and chicken, and it's good food though. It's not bad, and I loved the empanadas. That's one thing that I really liked about the Chilean food, was these huge empanadas just full of meat and onions, and I loved them. But you should know that there is always this trick olive in the empanadas, and they're just really salty and like vinegary, and they have the pit in them. So be careful when you eat the empanadas. I loved them, but it was always, I'd eat very carefully until I found the olive. Then I'd throw that out or give it to my companion, and then I could eat more confidently. But the food's really good, and the members they just love giving food, and the investigators too. So it's just one of those things where even if you're full, you just have to accept more food. And one traditional thing for Independence Day, they have this thing called mote con huesillo, which is basically like rotten peaches, like dried rotten peaches in this like juice with these little wheat balls in them. And that's really popular. You'll drink that a lot around in September. It's kind of a hassle to drink, but it's really good. So you'll enjoy the food. It won't be too bad. I know a lot of missionaries had to take little, I had a Mexican companion, and she always had this tiny little bottle of hot sauce, because it was just really hard for her to not have spice in her food. But it's fun, and it's not bad, and you won't eat too many crazy things. As far as adapting to missionary life, it was really hard for me at first. There was a lot of walking and a lot of rejection. And I remember going to my second area, and I was just frustrated because I still couldn't speak the language very well, and I definitely couldn't understand. And we were walking and walking and walking and walking and walking and getting rejected, and it was just really hard. And I remember just thinking that my feet hurt so bad, and it was hard for me to get motivated for the next day because my feet hurt so bad. And I remember reading the talk. It's a famous talk by Elder Bednar about the atonement and how it sustains you, and the real power of the atonement. So I remember one day I prayed and I fasted, and I prayed that God would change my feet. I prayed that the atonement could heal my feet and change them and make them stronger, in my back, and I also prayed that He changed my heart, that I could fully commit to missionary work. I loved being there, but it was just hard. It's just a hard adjustment, and it happened, and it was just this power that you just come to understand as you ask for it. And from that week on, my feet never hurt again, my whole mission. And I had areas that were much larger than that, where I did a lot more walking, and my feet, You could say that they adapted, or you could say that we split the area in half, and so those were all reasons, and that's true. But I really learned that. And so then, a year later, when I was teaching a woman who just loved the church so much, and who wanted to be baptized, and who had been going to church for 9 months before we even started teaching her, and she would get so close, and then she'd fall back into habits, and then we'd put another date with her, set more goals, and she just couldn't do it. It was too hard for her. And I remember just thinking back on that experience about how much God changes hearts. And I asked her, I told her about that, and we asked her to pray that God would change her heart, and that God would change her mind away from those temptations. And she was baptized shortly after. And she's such a strong convert. I remember she would, even before she was baptized, she would just get these huge impressions about her neighbor, the kids that lived in the house next to her, and how much they needed the gospel, and she would go pick them up for church every week, and she was just so committed to the gospel. And I think that was just a huge lesson that I learned my whole mission, that it doesn't matter what it is, the power of the atonement is real, and it's not just limited to repentance. And it's okay that we pray for things like our feet, and that they'll get stronger so that we can work harder, and it works. And God wants us to know that, and He wants us to feel that power, and it changes lives. I really gained a testimony of how much God cares about little things, and also a testimony of that we have to go through really hard trials. The hardest trial I ever went through, I won't go into great detail because it happens all the time, but it was just it was really hard. The members weren't cooperative, and they kind of they prevented a family from progressing in the church, and it was just a lot of things that me and my companion had to deal with. And I remember that we wouldn't go home for lunch because we knew it would be too hard to go work in the afternoon again, and so we'd work through lunch, and we'd get home late so we wouldn't have to think about what we were going through. And then we didn't have water anymore. We couldn't take a shower, and for about 4 days, and when our shower was broken, so we were just sort of, showering however we could, and then we ran out of minutes on our cell phone, and so it was a really hard week. And I remember that we walked up this hill, and we had about 1.5 miles to walk straight uphill, and we had a lesson in 20 minutes, and we were just dead tired, and we were sad, and we were discouraged, and we just did not want to walk up that hill. But it was the end of the month, and we didn't have money, and we finally decided that, all right, we'll take a bus. Like, that was a splurge for us, and we decided to take the bus and go up the hill. And we got on the bus, and we sat down, and then my companion went up to pay, and the bus driver said, "Ahí nomás," just like, "Oh, don't worry about it." And it was just, I think overall it was about $1.50 that we saved by not taking that bus that day. But it was a huge testimony to me and to my companion that God knew exactly what we were going through, and that it was something that He wanted us to go through, and that was okay. And I just remember looking out that window as we went straight uphill on the bus, and just being so grateful for the mission, even though it was such a crappy week, because you grow so strong, and then you're able to help so many people grow strong too. And I know that God looks out for us, and sometimes He's just waiting for us to ask in our prayer, so that we understand that He's in charge. And then when we understand that, He just fills our lives with so many blessings. So clothes are really important in this mission, in all missions probably, but you don't need anything waterproof. That's the coolest thing. I mean, there was not a single day where I thought, maybe it's gonna rain today, so I better take my jacket. Like, you don't even need to bring a jacket to the mission. It does get cold, and there's some cities that get colder than other cities, and I didn't bring a jacket to the mission, but all the sisters who did bring jackets left them in the apartment, so I didn't have to buy a jacket. And it's just, you don't want to be carrying around a jacket or a blanket because you're rarely going to use them. It's just real hot most of the time. This is a walking mission, and there is no other option. And so shoes are really important. The areas aren't too big. They're pretty small, but you'll still be walking for several hours a day. And little flats are just they're gonna hurt your feet, they're gonna hurt your knees. I had a lot of companions that had to buy really special shoes after a while because they had trashed their feet. My feet grew a half size on my mission, and I had really good shoes just because it's really hard on your feet. But just make sure you spend the money to get good shoes or good insoles. I had to use insoles too, and your feet will just, oh man, my feet just hurt so much at the beginning of my mission because I wasn't used to so much walking. So the shoes are really important. Also, I know it's a big temptation. It was a big temptation for me to bring nice clothes, but they'll get trashed. And things that wrinkle easily, you're just never going to use. You'll have like 1 or 2 nice outfits for zone conferences, but everything else should just be, a nice skirt you can wear multiple times a week and not feel ugly. I mean, you don't want to feel ugly. You'll put on makeup, you'll do your hair fine, but you just really want simple clothes.
What's the craziest food you had on your mission?
Liver. It was the worst.
What's the craziest experience you had on your mission?
Knocking doors and a naked man opening the door.
One of the most, your favorite parts of your mission?
Just being with the members.
Funny language mistake?
Learn some of the swear words early on so that you don't accidentally say them later on.
Greatest life lesson learned on your mission?
That the atonement changes hearts.
Best skill gained on your mission?
Planning. Goal setting.
Craziest weather you experienced?
Well, it wasn't weather, but a 8.3 earthquake. So.
Hardest experience you went through?
Watching someone fall away.
Best mission prep advice you can give?
Don't worry and enjoy it every second you can.
Best advice you can offer RNs?
I feel like I need that advice. Just keep praying consistently. So you just opened your call to La Misión Chile Antofagasta, la mejor misión del mundo. And congratulations. It is going to be so much fun. You are going to have the craziest experiences, and I know without a doubt that mission, God loves that mission. He loves all the missions, but sometimes when you're down there, you'll be in a tiny little ward with 20 people or 4 people, and you'll wonder if the church leaders know that you're down there struggling. And I can promise you that God knows what every person down there. The Chileans are so fun. They're so easy to love, and they're so relaxed, and they're just gonna love you. They love the missionaries down there. Even even the people who aren't members or the less actives, everybody loves the missionaries. And I remember just going in a little taxi one time, and they just stopped by this road stand, and he wasn't a member, and he bought us lunch, and just had it pass through the window and passed it back to us, because they just love the missionaries. And they'll let you in, they'll talk to you, and you're just gonna have so much fun, and you're gonna grow so much, and just love it. Just love your companions, love the people, be obedient. Just decide that you're gonna be obedient right now, because if you decide to get up every single day in the morning on time, it won't be a struggle. Get excited because you get to get up at 7:30 in the summers instead of 6:30 like the rest of the world. And get excited to never feel rain. It'll feel so weird to not feel rain, but it's so much fun. And good luck.
All right, so Antofagasta, it's a whole different world. It's an interesting place. It'll be different from whatever you've seen before, but you will love it. If you really try not to compare of the lifestyle or the houses or whatever you try to compare to Utah or these states, you're probably not gonna have a good time. But if you learn that that's new and that's the way people live their lives, and you want them to learn about the gospel and to be a better person, you will definitely learn a valuable lesson in your life. Antofagasta is a wonderful place. It changed my life and all of my companions' lives, and anybody that I've met that served Antofagasta loved it. And I had to say that people in Chile they're the most loving people you ever met. They will definitely change the way you relate to people, and you will learn to love a new and a stranger in the street and a new person you just met at their house. I would say be brave, speak Spanish, and don't be afraid to make mistakes, because they'll probably laugh, but not making fun of you. It'll just be funny, and they'll want to help you. If you don't know how to say something, just ask. If you don't feel comfortable with something, just tell them. Be like, I don't like this food too much, but I really appreciate it. They'll understand, and they'll love you anyway. Something you need to be prepared. You need to make sure that your testimony is strong. They will be able to see it. They will feel it too, and just be brave. Just go out there and do your work, and the Lord will bless you. As long as you're obedient, you will have a lot of success in your mission. The good thing about Antofagasta is that if you work hard, you see results, and you see them all the time. And if you want to have a successful mission, you can have it. It's up to you. The field, it's ready for you, and it's as long as you're willing to work and you put hard work in it, you'll be just fine. As I said, I'm from the country, and I wasn't expecting that. The environment, the scene, the view. It's a whole different thing. But I somehow, through the Spirit and through a lot of prayer and fasting, I learned to love something different. I learned to look at the desert and be like, I love this place. I can see beauty in something that most people can't. And I think that's a lesson you learn in a place that's that harsh and it's just that different. I don't think you can learn that in a different place. And if you're called to serve Antofagasta, you're called to serve in the most successful mission in Chile. And I love my hometown, Santiago, but the mission in Antofagasta, it's way better. And as I said, just be willing to put hard work in and you'll see success. And that'll change your life forever.